Charlie Parker, the man who changed jazz forever. Charles Parker Jr. was not just a musician, he was a rupture. Born on August 29, 1920, and gone by March 12, 1955, Parker lived only 34 years. Yet in that short time, he managed to alter the course of jazz music permanently. They called him Bird, sometimes Yardbird. But what he truly was a force of nature. Charlie Parker was a saxophonist, a composer, a bandleader, and above all, a revolutionary. He was one of the central architects of bebop, a musical language age that shattered the expectations of swing-era jazz with fast tempos, extreme virtuosity, and harmonic complexity that demanded total attention. Jazz, after Parker, would never be the same.
Early life, Kansas City. Charlie Parker was born in Kansas City, Kansas, but he grew up across the state line in Kansas City, Missouri, a place deeply shaped by blues, swing, and nightlife. His father, Charles Parker Sr., worked as a Pullman waiter and chef on the railways, often away from home. But he also had a background as a pianist, dancer, and singer on the Theater Owners Booking Association circuit. Music existed in Parker's world, even if stability did not. His mother, Adelaide "Addie" Bailey, worked nights at Western Union to keep the family afloat during the Great Depression. Parker's childhood was shaped by economic hardship, instability, and separation. His parents split in 1930, largely due to his father's alcoholism and the pressures of the era. Music became both refuge and obsession. At 11 years old, Charlie picked up the saxophone. At 14, he joined the Lincoln High School band, studying under bandmaster Alonzo Lewis. His mother bought him a new alto saxophone, an instrument that would soon become inseparable from his identity. One early influence was trombonist Robert Simpson, who introduced Parker to the fundamentals of improvisation. Those lessons planted a seed that would later explode into something entirely new. By 15, Parker was no longer interested in school. In December 1935, he dropped out, joined the local musicians union, and committed himself fully to music.
Failure, humiliation, and obsession. Kansas City in the 1930s was a brutal proving ground for musicians. Jam sessions were competitive, unforgiving, and merciless. In early 1936, during a jam session with musicians from the Count Basie Orchestra, Parker attempted to solo and completely lost the chord changes. Drummer Joe Jones responded by pulling a cymbal from his kit and throwing it at Parker's feet, a public signal that he didn't belong on that stage. It was humiliation, but it was also ignition. Instead of quitting, Parker made a vow. He would outwork everyone.
For the next 3 to 4 years, he practiced obsessively, sometimes up to 15 hours a day. He studied harmony, chord substitutions, and scales with relentless focus. This period, known among musicians as his woodshedding years, forged the foundation of his revolutionary style. During this time, Parker married Rebecca Ruffin and had 2 children, but his growing heroin addiction strained the relationship. They divorced in 1939. A near-fatal car accident in 1936 left Parker with broken ribs and a fractured spine. Morphine was prescribed for pain, and that prescription would follow him for the rest of his life.
The birth of bebop. In 1939, Parker moved to New York City. He was broke, hungry, and desperate. At one point, he worked as a dishwasher at Jimmy's Chicken Shack for $9 a week, just to hear pianist Art Tatum play. Parker absorbed everything: harmony, phrasing, speed, like a sponge. Living with fellow saxophonist Buster Smith, Parker began refining ideas that no one else fully understood yet.
Then came the breakthrough. While practicing the tune Cherokee, Parker realized something radical, that by using the full chromatic scale, all 12 notes, and emphasizing upper chord tones, he could move freely between keys. Harmony no longer confined him. It opened. Parker later said, "I came alive." This was bebop, not background music. not dance music, but music that demanded intellect, attention, and risk.
New York. After hours. In Harlem, after-hours clubs became laboratories. Clark Monroe's Uptown House, sessions that lasted until dawn. Here, Parker met kindred spirits, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Kenny Clark, Charlie Christian, Mary Lou Williams. They challenged each other. They rejected convention. They played faster, stranger, sharper.
Bebop was not immediately welcomed. Many swing musicians saw it as a threat. Audiences didn't always understand it, but the language was forming, quietly, fiercely.
War, strikes, and lost history. From 1942 to 1944, the American Federation of Musicians recording ban meant that much of bebop's earliest development went undocumented. The music evolved in clubs, not studios. Parker played with Earl Hines and later Billy Eckstine, alongside Dizzy Gillespie. These bands shaped his phrasing, his rhythmic sense, and his compositional voice. During this time, Parker began composing tunes that would become jazz standards. Coco, Anthropology, Confirmation. These were not simple songs. They were puzzles, challenges.
Explosion, 1945. When the recording ban lifted, the world finally heard what had been happening. In November 1945, Parker recorded for Savoy Records in a session later marketed as the greatest jazz session ever. Coco, Billy's Bounce. Now's the time.
Bebop had arrived, but success did not bring stability.
California Breakdown. In late 1945, Parker traveled to Los Angeles. The engagement failed. His band returned to New York. Parker stayed behind. Without access to heroin, he turned to alcohol. His behavior spiraled. In 1946, after a disastrous recording session, Parker suffered a complete breakdown. He was arrested, hospitalized, and eventually committed to Camarillo State Mental Hospital. 6 months later, he emerged sober and physically restored.
He recorded Relaxin' at Camarillo. It sounded hopeful, but the piece didn't last.
The Genius and the Struggle. Back in New York, Parker returned to heroin. Yet artistically, he entered one of his most productive periods. He recorded relentlessly for Savoy and Dial. He formed a legendary quintet with Miles Davis and Max Roach. He performed at Carnegie Hall. He recorded Charlie Parker with strings, fulfilling a dream of blending jazz and classical sensibility. Parker admired Stravinsky. He wanted jazz to evolve, structurally, intellectually.
But racism, addiction, and exhaustion weighed heavily.
The final years. By the early 1950s, Parker's health was failing. His daughter Pre died in 1954, devastating him. He attempted suicide. He was fired from Birdland. He became increasingly unreliable.
On March 12, 1955, Parker died in the apartment of Baroness Panonica, watching television. The coroner estimated his body to be between 50 and 60 years old. Charlie Parker was 34.
The Charlie Parker in cinema and cultural memory.
In 1988, more than 3 decades after Charlie Parker's death, his life found a new voice, not through a saxophone, but through cinema. That year, the film Bird was released, a biographical musical drama directed and produced by Clint Eastwood. Rather than offering a traditional linear biography, the film chose a different path. Memory instead of chronology, emotion instead of explanation.
Bird was written by Joel Oliansky and starred Forrest Whitaker as Charlie Parker, with Diane Venora portraying Chon Parker, the woman who would become his emotional anchor during the most turbulent years of his life.
The film unfolds as a montage of moments. Fragments of Parker's childhood in Kansas City, his rise in New York, his brilliance, his demons, and his early death at the age of 34. Time bends constantly, mirroring the way Parker himself lived, intensely, unpredictably, and often painfully. Rather than trying to explain Charlie Parker, the film tries to feel him. Much of Bird revolves around the few relationships that grounded Parker in an otherwise chaotic life. His bond with Chan is central, a relationship built on love, patience, and constant fear of loss. Chan is not portrayed as a savior, but as someone who stayed again and again when walking away would have been easier.
Another key presence is Dizzy Gillespie, played by Samuel E. Wright. Dizzy represents both musical partnership and ideological brotherhood. Together, they stand at the birth of bebop, not as a planned revolution, but as a necessity. Faster tempos, sharper harmonies, no compromises. The film also explores Parker's influence on Red Rodney, a young white Jewish trumpet player portrayed by Michael Zelniker. Red admires Parker deeply, musically, culturally, and tragically, even following him into heroin addiction. Through this relationship, the film confronts one of Parker's most uncomfortable legacies, not just genius, but damage.
Despite modest box office results, Bird was embraced by critics. Forrest Whitaker's performance was widely praised and became his breakthrough role. He won the Best Actor award at the 1988 Cannes Film Festival and received a Golden Globe nomination. Clint Eastwood himself won Best Director, and Cahiers du Cinéma ranked Bird among the 5 best films of the year. But perhaps the most powerful thing about Bird is what it refuses to do. It does not romanticize addiction. It does not turn Parker into a myth without cost.
And it does not pretend that genius makes suffering meaningful. The film opens in 1939 at the Reno Club in Kansas City. A young Charlie Parker steps on stage, plays too fast, too strange, too much, and is laughed off. It is a humiliation that mirrors the real-life jam session where he was publicly dismissed. From that moment, the film moves between eras, showing Parker's struggle to be heard in a world not ready for what he was becoming. In New York on 52nd Street, Parker meets Dizzy Gillespie. Together, they shape a new sound, bebop, music that challenges both musicians and audiences. But success never arrives cleanly. Engagements are canceled, clubs lose interest, and Parker's addictions deepen.
Chan enters his life slowly, cautiously. She resists him at first, leaves, returns pregnant with another man's child. Parker cannot handle it and runs to Los Angeles, to drugs, to collapse. There, his addictions spiral out of control. He is hospitalized for months. When he finally returns clean, Chan helps him rebuild, securing club bookings and reintroducing stability into his life. Birdland opens, named after him, a symbol of recognition that arrives too late to save him. The film follows Parker through touring, racial tensions, arrests, the loss of his cabaret card, and the devastating death of his daughter, Pri. That loss breaks something in him permanently.
In one of the film's most haunting sequences, Parker wanders through 52nd Street only to find the jazz clubs gone, replaced by strip clubs. The world he helped create has already moved on. He misses an audition. He doesn't tell Chan. Instead, he goes to the apartment of Baroness Panonica, one of the few people who treated him with dignity until the end. There, watching television, Charlie Parker dies, quietly, unceremoniously, at 34. Bird does not end with applause or redemption. It ends with absence. And perhaps that is its greatest honesty.
Because Charlie Parker's story was never about a happy ending. It was about transformation, of music, of rhythm, of harmony, and of what it meant to be an artist. Through film, Parker reached audiences who had never listened to bebop, never transcribed a solo, never understood why jazz changed forever. And even then, the truth remained the same. Charlie Parker burned fast, burned bright, and left a sound that the world is still trying to catch up with.
Legacy. Charlie Parker changed jazz forever. His compositions, his improvisations, his harmonic language. Miles Davis once said, "You can tell the history of jazz in 4 words. Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker."
Bird didn't just play music, he redefined what music could be. And even today, every modern jazz musician is still, in some way, answering to Charlie Parker.